Okay, today is May 4th, 2024, and even though I'm embarrassed by how behind I am, I'm going to do a quick little update on what's going on in the Yard-Stead. We'll start with the grow beds. Considering it's just the first Saturday of May, I'm okay with what's going on in here. I got a lot of lettuce, I've got a bunch of cilantro growing there, and I've got potatoes coming up. 1, 2, 3, 4 potato plants. And the dandelions, you know what, I'm gonna eat those, so you might as well just count those as food. In this grow bed, the lettuce is doing beautifully. I'm eating that already. And I've got a bunch of arugula. Looks like it's just gonna take over. And I've got, you can't really see them because I need to pull the dandelions out of the way, but I've got some radishes and beets coming up over here. Like I said, May 4th, so not bad. I'll be, planting a second crop of those easily, maybe a third. And then this grow bed, I haven't done anything with, but I have a good reason. The reason I haven't done it is because I'm lazy. I'm effing lazy, and I haven't done anything with it yet. But, some people haven't even planted yet, so May 4th, all right, I'll give myself a little slack. As far as the microforest, wait a minute. Just wait one gol-darn minute. What in the gol-darn heck is a microforest? What in the gol-darn am I talking about anyway? I mentioned this in an earlier video, but I haven't really explained what in the gol-darn heck that means anyhow. So that's why I'm cutting to this talking head shot, so that my head can talk and explain to you just what the gol-darn heck I'm talking about. You see, originally, I was hoping to do some kind of a food forest in that space out there. And let me guess, you don't know what that is either. That's cool. I'm supposed to be explaining things here, so this is a good one. A food forest is a piece of land where you're trying to mimic some of the attributes of an old-growth forest. The inspiration comes from the way that an old-growth forest is a climax ecosystem, meaning that all the living things have had time to work things out with one another, and the result is a stable, self-sustaining ecosystem where everything is working harmoniously in perfect balance. In a food forest, you're trying to put things together in a way that finds that balance, but you're introducing plants that are, as much as possible, edible. You won't get quite the same yield as you can with intensive gardening, but you don't really have to do nearly as much work. There's a lot of effort at first, but after a few years, I've heard to expect 3 or 4, all of the living things find balance with one another, and you get to eat the things they make, like fruit, beans, potatoes, and frankly, whatever works for you, whatever works for the forest. It's kind of like controlled chaos. One way to put it is that you're directing the band, but they're making up the song as they go. If you look at an old-growth forest, you find 7 basic layers: tall trees, shorter trees, vines, shrubs, herbs, ground cover, and roots. In a true food forest, you model that model and plant your plants to mimic the forest, but likely you're choosing plants that can feed you. Now, depending on your climate, your tall trees might be pecans, your small trees could be apple, your shrubs could be blueberries, your vines could be kiwi, etc., etc. You shepherd those plants at first, but ideally they eventually find balance with one another and become a self-sustaining ecosystem. And one of the benefits, by the way, is that a food forest can sequester impressive amounts of carbon, and that is a very good thing. Thing is, I have such a small little piece of land here that I don't think I can really pull it off. I just don't have enough space. I don't have enough expertise. And I don't have enough time. I'm a special combination of lazy and busy. So what I'm doing here is not something that I think I can justify calling a food forest, so that's why I'm calling it a microforest. I want to borrow some of the ideas of a food forest and create something similar, and this is going to be a total experiment, and I'm inviting you to come along for the ride. This is going to be fun. Now, the first step I did cover in the last Yard-Stead video. I laid down a bunch of cardboard and covered it with wood mulch. That was the year before last. The idea was that the wood mulch and cardboard would break down and turn into something that can support plants. That takes time. And as you can see from this shot, I definitely have something that plants will grow in. Unfortunately, those plants are mostly grass, which is not something I want to eat. But that's okay. In this little microforest, there's no such thing as a weed. Those grass plants are sending down roots and breaking up the soil, which is very clay. And if I have dandelions, they're pulling calcium up to the topsoil where other plants can get to it. And when those plants die, their roots will dry up and leave little holes and pores in the soil that can hold water and carbon, which will make it easier for other things to grow. That's a process called chop and drop, where you just cut down the stuff you can't eat or don't want, but the leaves and stems just become compost while the roots help create healthy soil. No such thing as a weed in here. Now, the first couple years in here, I had all kinds of thistles, like 5 and 6 foot tall thistles. I just let them grow, but I did cut off the flowers before they could go to seed. But in the meantime, their roots broke up the very clay soil I have, and their bodies became compost. So they made their contribution, as did the cardboard and the wood mulch, and now I have something kind of like soil where things can actually grow. For now, yeah, that thing is just grass, and I have to decide what to do. On one hand, I could just let it grow like I did the thistles. It'll break up the soil and then turn into compost. But since I'm making videos, I think I'll do something else. I'm going to rototill this area and then put down another layer of wood mulch, and then I'm going to plant things in the pseudo-soil underneath it. And thanks to video magic, you can now see that I have done that mostly. Just when I was almost done putting down the new layer of mulch, we had some ferocious wind come through. Those of you who live in Colorado know exactly what I'm talking about, what happened this week. So, okay, best laid plans and all that. It's supposed to be even windier tomorrow, and if I'm going to keep my normal video posting schedule, I'm not going to have time to finish the mulch, but that's okay. My whole philosophy with this is that I'm not really in charge. The microforest is in charge. I'm just kind of loosely steering. By adding all the wood mulch, I'm hoping to encourage fungal growth. One of the differences between a forest and a garden is that the soil in the garden is inhabited. Yeah, I'm going to stay with inhabited. The soil in the garden is inhabited by bacteria, whereas in a forest, the underground life is predominantly fungi. And those fungi have a lot of really important jobs. One of them is to break down all the wood. Wood is made from cellulose, which is something fungi love to eat. And in the process of doing that, they break that cellulose down and make all of its nutrients available to the next generation of living things. Fungi are absolutely the apex between life and death. And sometimes I like to think that soil is its own ancestor. The bardo, as it turns out, is a mushroom. How do you like that? I think a lot of people think that the main character in a forest is the trees, but I tend to think that it's all of their dead ancestors on the forest floor. All the rotting bits of plant and wood and the fungi turning them into life. That's where it's really happening. Oh, and by the way, I got a ton of free wood mulch dumped right in my driveway, and you probably can too. Our lovely neighbor runs a tree service, and they were more than happy to unload a bunch of wood chips right here. They were more than happy to do it, and if you call around, you can probably find the same thing. For a lot of them, it's easier and cheaper to give their wood mulch to you, so don't be afraid to ask. So getting all that chopped up wood is the most important thing I need to do this spring. Next step will be to put down some irrigation lines on a timer. Hopefully this thing will need very little water, and eventually I may not have to water it very much at all, because the mulch and compost and the pores in the soil will hold enough moisture to keep things alive. The apple tree that I had just planted in the last video is going to kind of be the centerpiece of the whole thing. Other than that, I have this little box where I've always kept all my seeds for the garden. Well, over the years, some of them have spilled, some have expired, and some have just gotten kind of mixed up. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to throw the whole kit and caboodle out there and just see what happens, and that's going to be fun. Maybe just the kit without the caboodle, or maybe the caboodle minus the... Nah. You only live once. I'm going to throw the kit and the caboodle out there, and it's going to be fun. Now, if you look up food forest on the interwebs, and I hope you do, you're going to find some incredibly impressive undertakings. Some of the people engineering these things are amazing. They have plotted out exactly where their water is, and they've built berms to direct it to exactly the place they want it. They've plotted their sun lines. They've hired landscape architects to create perfect little ecosystems that'll just blow your mind. And I'm not going to do that. Like I said, I am a special combination of busy and lazy. I want this thing to mostly do what it wants. There's this one YouTuber named David the Good who describes his approach to a food forest as anarchistic, and that is much of the inspiration for what I'm doing. In fact, like I said, I don't think I can even call this a food forest. It's permaculture chaos. There's an expression that I'd like to use, but I think it might no longer be acceptable, so I'll put it this way. The patients are taking over the facility. Okay, so now you know what I'm talking about in future videos when I mention the microforest. Expect more surprises than successes. I can't wait. Now, meanwhile, let's go back to my update. I think I left off at the greenhouse, so let's take a look. Okay, not a lot to report in here. I bought a couple of plugs a few weeks ago, and they're just doing great. I also have some oregano that was started as a plug and some thyme that started as a plug, and they're doing wonderfully. I planted some seeds to give them an early start. This is a melon plant that it is starting to come up. The seeds I planted in these two, yeah, it's just hit and miss. I have some delicata squash coming up, some romaine. It's sprouting, and some zucchini that's just barely sprouting. And then, as always, there's a few things that just stubbornly do not want to wake up. So we'll see how that's coming along in a couple more weeks. The compost bin is a mixed bag. It's a pain in the butt because, okay, so we have curbside composting here in Longmont, but they stopped taking paper because people were being lazy and leaving tape on their boxes. So they were like, yeah, no more paper. So I started my own compost pile just for coffee and coffee filters. Well, it's coming along nice enough. The coffee is turning into beautiful compost, but the filters themselves just aren't breaking down. So I'll probably run those through the rototiller this weekend, or maybe the lawnmower, to try and break them down, or I'll fish them out and I'll start a second compost pile. Oh, and by the way, I did take out another piece of the yard and mulched it, and I put in a peach tree. I don't know if I caught that in the last video, but yeah, I'm gonna have to put another layer of mulch down, but that's okay, it's free. Oh, and by the way, I just measured that apple tree. I couldn't really reach it with the camera, but just as a little point of information, it's gotten up to 91 inches. I think it was 78 or 9 when I first got it, so it's put on about 10, 11, 12 inches. And as far as the compost goes, yeah, I did. I rototilled. I don't know if this is going to show up, but I rototilled in there, chop up the coffee filters, and I found that there's quite a lot of really nice looking, very rich compost. I think coffee filters, because you get nitrogen in the coffee and carbon in the filters. It's a wonderful recipe for compost. So yeah, now I've got to figure out how I'm going to separate this. And that's all I've got for you this week. Thanks so much for watching. Hope to see you next time. Ciao.